Welcome to Lead on the podcast for nonprofit leaders navigating change with intention. Brought to you by CNA. Social Impact Consulting, we explore what it really takes to lead with clarity, courage, and consistency in complex times. No binders, no buzzwords, just thoughtful conversations and practical guidance to help leaders and missions move forward. LeadOn is powered by Notebook LM and produced by CNA, Social Impact Consulting.
And we are so glad you're joining us for this deep dive today.
We really are, because today our core mission is focused on helping you, the nonprofit leaders out there who are just, frankly, tired of surviving. We want to help you finally thrive by conquering what is essentially data paralysis.
Yeah, that is such a huge issue right now.
It really is. And to tackle it, we are grounding today's deep dive in a recent framework by Damon Colaluca from CNA, Social Impact Consulting. It's titled Data Informed, Not Data Paralyzed.
Right. And, if you are listening to this and you have ever felt totally overwhelmed by external reporting requirements or maybe you just feel like your data isn't actually helping you make decisions, well, this discussion is going to give you a really practical, lightweight way to regain your momentum.
Definitely. But before we get to the solutions, we have to talk about the trap.
Oh, the trap is real. Damon shares this really striking cautionary anecdote in the framework. Picture a nonprofit that spent 6 solid months debating a dashboard.
6 months, just on the dashboard.
Literally 6 months. They are arguing over color coding, refining drop-down menus, defining parameters, and meanwhile, out in the real world, their community demographics are completely shifting.
Wow.
Staff is turning over, the board is moving on to other things. They stall their own progress completely.
That's painful to hear. Because it looks like they are doing the right thing.
Exactly. On paper, it looks responsible. It looks like rigor. But Damon breaks down the psychology of this, and it's fascinating. It's actually driven by fear.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because no one in those meetings is thinking, oh, I'm just afraid right now.
Right. They think they're being incredibly precise.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's like a team packing for an urgent rescue mission, right? But instead of getting in the vehicle and going, they spend days arguing over the color and the brand of the suitcases.
Yes. That is a perfect way to put it, because asking for more data or, better data is the most defensible way to delay making a hard choice.
Right. It feels like work.
It does. But underneath it, it's a fear of being wrong, or a fear of what funders will think, or just a fear of committing to a strategy.
So how do we break out of that mindset?
Well, there is this core insight from Bridgespan that Damon highlights, and it flips the whole script. Impact measurement should be about understanding progress so you can improve, not just approve.
Improve, not just prove. I like that distinction.
Yeah, because if your system exists entirely for external reporting, just proving your worth to funders, the organization is always going to feel like it's lagging behind.
Which makes total sense. So if the goal is to make better choices, rather than just doing this endless reporting, how do we know exactly what to measure?
It has to start with a strategic backbone. You can't just measure what's easy to count.
Like tracking how many flyers you handed out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That doesn't tell you anything about impact. So the backbone you need is a theory of change.
And I know for some people, hearing theory of change sounds like a massive, expensive consulting project.
Oh, totally. But it really doesn't have to be. In fact, Damon points out that CNA offers a free theory of change worksheet. It's a highly practical starting point.
That's great.
Yeah, because a theory of change gives you 3 essential things: a clear outcome chain, testable assumptions, and a strict logic for what you actually need to measure.
Right, which leads us to this huge shift in the framework, moving from measuring absolutely everything to just measuring what Damon calls the vital few.
The vital few, yes. This is where organizations really have to discipline themselves.
And the numbers they suggest are pretty tight, right?
Very tight. We're talking 3 to 5 outcome indicators for mission progress, then 3 to 5 operational indicators to check the health and capacity of the organization.
Yeah, okay.
And then, crucially, 1 to 2 equity indicators to explicitly track who is benefiting and who isn't.
And for anyone wondering how to even find those candidate outcomes, the framework mentions the Urban Institute's Outcome Indicators project as a really helpful reference.
Yes, highly recommend checking that out.
But I have to jump in here and push back on these numbers a bit. Is tracking just 3 to 5 outcomes really enough for a complex, multi-layered nonprofit? I mean, that sounds almost too simple.
I know, it really does, and that is such a valid question. But Damon reiterates this messy truth about leadership. You can measure everything, but you will manage nothing.
Measure everything, manage nothing.
Right, because if you walk into a leadership meeting with 40 different metrics, you spend the whole time just trying to comprehend the dashboard. You don't actually make any decisions.
Ah, yeah, you just end up reading the data out loud to each other.
Exactly. So the vital few forces you to focus on the organizational level. The departments can still track their daily stuff, but leadership needs to focus.
Okay, so let's say an organization does this. They identify their vital few. How do they ensure these metrics don't just live in some forgotten slide deck?
This is where the Stanford Social Innovation Review, or SSAR, has a great perspective. Building a data culture requires consistent use, not just occasional data moments when the board is in town.
Right, it can't be a dog and pony show.
Exactly. So a framework really have to answer 3 core questions. First, clarify outcomes. What change are we trying to make?
Okay.
Second, track progress. What evidence shows us that change is happening? And third, trigger decisions. What will we actually do differently based on this?
Triggering decisions is where most places get stuck, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why the framework details what TechBridge calls a decision rhythm. Data has to have a specific job.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does this rhythm actually break down?
It breaks down into 3 cadences: weekly, monthly, and quarterly.
Okay, if I can use an analogy here, it feels a lot like the human body. So weekly is like the heartbeat, right?
Yeah, I love that. The weekly rhythm is your operational pulse. It's strictly about capacity, immediate bottlenecks, and risks. Just keeping the organization alive this week.
Right, the heartbeat. And
Yeah.
then monthly is like breathing. You're taking in new information.
Exactly. Monthly is the program learning review. You're looking at what's changing out there, what's working, and maybe what's drifting off course.
And then quarterly is the brain. It's checking the map to see if you are actually walking in the right direction.
Spot on. Quarterly is for strategy adjustment. That is when you make the hard calls to stop, start, scale, or completely redesign a program.
Having those distinct lanes makes so much sense. But even with the right rhythm, leaders still freeze at the moment of actually making the decision. It's like this perfectionism kicks in.
Yes, they want just one more survey or one more month of data.
Exactly. So how do we break that final barrier?
This is where we bring in the good enough data rule.
Good enough data. That probably scares some perfectionist board members.
Oh, it terrifies them. But it's actually brilliant risk management. The rule is simple. If a decision is reversible, you move with good enough data and you learn fast.
Because you can always just undo it if it fails.
Right. But if a decision is hard to reverse, like signing a 10-year lease, then you slow down. You validate, and you gather much stronger evidence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this framework of reversible versus irreversible, it protects those rigorous standards without killing the organization's momentum. You don't need a 6-month study for a reversible choice.
That is so freeing. Okay, so what are the specific action steps a listener can take right now?
3 things. First, create one shared definition sheet. So when you say active participant, it means the exact same thing to everyone in the building.
No more comparing apples to oranges.
Exactly. Second, choose just one learning question per quarter, like what predicts staff retention. Just focus on that. And third, make the data visible to staff.
Yeah.
Stop hiding it in executive folders.
Make it visible. Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because when leaders get frustrated with data, they often just want to buy a new software tool, right? Like some new AI platform.
Yes, the tech silver bullet.
The framework mentions this AI and data guardrails playbook, which has a mini assessment to prioritize fixing your workflows before you buy new tech.
Right, because technology won't fix a broken strategy. If your data culture is a mess, AI is just going to process that mess faster.
Yeah, it's just going to confidently give you the wrong answer.
Exactly. And there are some great resources mentioned in Damon's piece for diving deeper into this, like the book The Tyranny of Metrics.
Oh, that's a good one.
It really is. And also Trisha Wang's TED Talk. She talks about the human insights that are so often missing from big data.
Yeah.
It's a great reminder to keep the human element front and center. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final challenge inspired by that vital few concept.
Okay, let's hear it.
Look at your current dashboard or your reporting requirements. What is the one metric you've been diligently tracking that hasn't triggered a single strategic decision in the last 12 months?
Oh, wow.
And what would happen if you simply stopped measuring it tomorrow to free up capacity for something that actually matters?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. That's a wrap on this episode of LeadOn. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, we invite you to subscribe and share it with a fellow nonprofit leader. You can find us on Spotify and at leadonpodcast.com. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and lead on.